In this video, I'm going to do the first test sewing since I fully restored this Singer 301. I'm also going to show you how to properly wind a bobbin and how to thread the machine. Then I'm also going to go over any little minor hiccups you might run into after you've done a process like this. If you find this video helpful, please remember to give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. If you really like what you see, check out the description box below because I provided a link to the full playlist that has a whole series on how to restore a Singer 301. Now, I've been waiting for this for a long time, so let's get sewing. So we are ready to start the test sewing portion of our Singer 301 restoration. There are still some things that you will need. I recommend a new needle, and this is just a Schmetz Universal. You can see the size here, 80-12, something basic, normal. Don't try to test sew with a jeans needle or a leather needle or something like that. That's not going to give you true results. You need a bobbin, and I have already wound this with thread. Now, I understand that some of you may not know how to wind the bobbin. So I will be showing you in this video how to wind the bobbin for two reasons. A, you might not know how. B, we have to make sure that we have set our bobbin winder bracket, that we've positioned this properly so that our bobbin is going to wind evenly. That means that you'll watch the thread dart back and forth from right to left. So we will be winding a bobbin. Then we will be threading our machine. Another thing I want to talk to you about, which I feel is sort of important to mention, I am using an electronic style foot control. You can find these for anywhere from $25 to $30 some if you have to buy this and the power cord. I would almost recommend to anyone who's going to do more than one of these machines, always test first on one of these. The reason why is the button style foot controls may need their own restoration. So if that foot control has not been used by you and you already know that it's functioning properly, you could plug it in, turn on the machine, go to sew, and you would think you have a problem with your machine when all that really is wrong is that the foot control needs to be adjusted, or maybe it just doesn't work very well anymore. So I just want to point that out. And if I come across any problems today and as we're sewing, I will try to suggest some of the things that could be happening to you that could be foot controller related. And I'll do that the best that I can. You also will want some fabric, and I am just using my cotton. This is just test sew. We're checking out to make sure that our feed is working correctly, our tensions are all correct. So that's all I'm really worried about. I don't need a big chunk of denim for this. So I'm going to set it up so we can wind our first bobbin. So the kind of bobbin that this 301 takes is also the same kind of bobbin as a Singer Featherweight. It is a class 221 bobbin. Now, the one you have may just have a ring of holes on the outside, or it may have those holes and a little hole right here somewhere around the center, more than likely on both sides. What you want to do is take your spool of thread, and I'm choosing something that's easy to see. This is just polyester thread, nothing fancy. You will place your spool of thread onto the little spool pin right here. Now, take your bobbin and find the tail of the thread, which is here. And if you don't have this little hole here, then just use one of the outside holes. But if you do, you'll run it up from the inside and then through that centered hole. I'm doing it around the camera, so hopefully it'll be easier for you than me. But just like that. I like to thread my bobbin before I start to put it on the bobbin winder. I just think it's easier. Then you're going to raise your bobbin winding arm. You're going to slide and put it so the tail is coming out the side that's pointing away from the bobbin winder. Slide your bobbin onto the bobbin winder. You're not ready to wind the bobbin yet. Now you're going to want to take this thread and pull it down and just raise it up in between these little tension discs here. Like that. Make sure that it's secure. Then you're going to want to disengage your clutch. That's this here. That's why I turned the machine this way so you could see what I was doing. But you're going to hold your metal hand wheel still, and you're going to rotate that clutch until it stops. Now you can press your bobbin winding tire up, this whole arm extension up until it meets the hand wheel. Then you are ready to actually press your foot pedal and start winding your bobbin. I want to turn this so we can see together how this bobbin is going to wind. So I've turned this so you can see what we're looking for. We're watching the thread travel through these little tension discs up, and then it will start wrapping around the bobbin once we press the foot controller. Make sure that the tire is pressed up against the hand wheel. And now let's watch this thread. We want to see if it's piling up all to one side or if it's going to just travel right and left and evenly wind the bobbin. Do not go super fast doing this. I will just tell you that right now. If you have done a great job on your motor and it can spin super fast, it will go too fast and you will end up with thread knotted all around here. Trust me, I know this. I've done it before and I just did it again and I had to start over with filming the video. So it really will happen. So I'm just going to lightly press the foot control and I'm going to watch this thread. And it's spinning for me. You see that? It's going right and left evenly. So I do not need to make any adjustments to the bobbin winder. If you do, if the problem you're having is that it is going too much to one side or the other, that involves loosening this screw. And then you're going to either slide this bracket a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, and you try again, and then see if your bobbin is winding evenly then. So that's essentially it. Now this is ready for me to cut the tail off. I'm not putting a boatload of thread on this, by the way. I just need to do some test sewing, so I'm not going to fill it up. But I can take this off and I can cut it, and I am ready then to thread up my machine. To thread, you will take your spool of thread and put it onto the spool pin here in the back. You will take your thread and you're going to bring it around under this little hook here. It just lays into this thread guide here. Now you're going to pull your tail, and if you remember, I said that this metal part here is going to guide your thread right between the two tension discs. Make sure your foot on your machine is up when you do this. Just run it along this metal piece here like this. It will slide in between the two discs. Then you're going to pull this thread up, and if you want, you can hold your thumb right here. Watch what happens. This thread's going to come up and it's going to wrap around this little finger right here, and you're probably going to hear a click. I'm going to have to do it this way, just like that. Now my thread is hooked around this finger and I can take it through this next thread guide. Then you want to thread it through the eye of the thread take up, and you may have to keep tucking it back in this guide. Then you're going to slide it behind this little loop here from the left to the right until it snaps into place. Now, this sometimes can be put on a little bit out of position. And if you're struggling to get that thread to slide from left to right, try opening up your nose cover, undoing this little screw right here, wiggling this part, maybe seeing if you can pull it out anymore, tighten the screw back down, and then you'll probably have enough clearance that the thread can snap behind that. But that happens to me, and that is an easy way to fix it. So now we just have a couple thread guides left. These two thread guides, for the first one, you just go from the left to the right behind the little loop, and it will just snap into place. This one, you just put it from left to right, so it's behind this finger. Now for your needles, the needle goes in with the flat side pointing to the left, which is easy to remember because the flat side of the needle plate is also pointing to the left. So it helps to have your needle in its highest position. And if you didn't, make sure that you go ahead and re-engage your clutch if you need to actually turn your needle to get it into the highest position. Push the needle all the way up into this hole, and you'll get a feel for it eventually, but it has one way that it will fit. And then you can tighten down your needle clamp and it should not move. Now, there's one last little thread guide. I don't thread that until I thread the needle, which threads from right to left, just like that. After I do that, then I tuck it into this last thread guide. For some reason, if I do this first, it comes out. So I just wait. So this is ready and my foot is still up. I want to grab my bobbin case now. And we're going to talk about how you put the bobbin in your bobbin case. So if you look at your bobbin case, it's going to sit in the machine. This hole is going to point up towards the needle plate, this hole right here. So that means every time you take it out, you'll be grabbing this finger here like this. So the way that you put the thread in is right under this hole, you will see there is this cutout. The cutout runs towards you. Make sure that when you put the bobbin on, the way the thread wraps, if you were unwrapping it, it would be unwrapping away from you. So they're opposite. So I'm going to set the bobbin into the bobbin case, then pulling the thread around and away, I'm going to catch that little cutout and I'm going to pull it up until I get it into that hole and sort of centered. You can see there's a little tiny divot there. That's where I want the thread. Now, am I ready to put this in the machine? Well, on a normal day, if this machine were already finished and I knew it was working fine, yes. Not today. I want to see if I have my tension set properly on my bobbin case. If I tug on this thread, I can tell by feeling how tight it is. To me, this feels tight. Generally, a good rule of thumb is if you hold it like this and shake it, you might see the thread, pull out just a little bit. This doesn't have, it's not loose enough. It's not set right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the screws here and adjust how tight this spring is. The screw you adjust is a screw that's closest to where the thread comes out to this hole. And you can turn it clockwise if you feel like it's too tight and you want it to have if it's too loose and you want it to be harder to pull. But in my case, I want to turn it counterclockwise to loosen it because I feel like it's too hard to pull. So I'm just going to give it a little test. I still feel like it's a little bit rough, but I also tightened that to show you how to tighten it. So, 1/4 of a turn. Now, if I do the drop test, see, it starts to come out. It doesn't if it's just hanging there, but it does start to come out. So I'm happy with that tension on this bobbin. That's how I'm going to start sewing initially. So let me just trim off some of this extra tail that I created. So to put it into the hook, this is how you do it. So remember, I said that this hole is always going to be pointing up towards the needle plate. So I'm going to hold the bobbin case and I have to pull the finger out. And I'm going to line up this center hole with this point on the hook assembly. And I'm just going to slide it all on, just like that. Now we need to pull this tail up. So you can go ahead and lower your presser foot for this, or you can keep it up. I typically don't to just pull the tail up, but I'm going to rotate the hand wheel towards me, holding the tail thread for the needle, and I'm going to let it do one full pass, and then I should be able to pull, and it should catch the thread from the bobbin. Now we can tuck this behind, and guess what? We can start sewing. Now, before we get crazy here and start pressing down our foot control and sewing, I want you to check out just one thing. Go ahead and place some fabric under your foot. Lower your foot. Set your stitch length to around 10. Set your tension dial to 3. And I want you to turning the hand wheel towards you only with your hand, not pressing your foot control. You can hold on to these tails if that makes you a little more comfortable. We're going to follow the needle, and as the needle gets down into the fabric, I want you to see what position this spring is in. So I'm at a 10. I've set my tension to a 3. I'm turning my hand wheel towards me. And now my needle is not in the fabric yet. The spring is up here. As it comes down, and right there, it's entering the fabric, my spring is at rest. If you remember when we put the tension on, I said it was adjustable right here. If this spring were up here when the needle entered the fabric, or if my needle were a ways away from the fabric and it was already at rest, then I would need to undo this screw and either take it to the right or the left in order to adjust it so this check spring comes to rest at the right point. So let's do that one more time. It's traveling forward. The needle is not in the fabric, not in the fabric. It's in the fabric. And my spring is resting. I don't need to adjust this. So I had you do that by hand because if you were actually pressing your foot control, you would be going too fast and it would be hard to see what's happening. Plus, if something's still going on funny in the hook area or something, you might end up with just a bunch of knots. So I'm going to remove my work here, and it just pulls out because I've raised my presser foot. Now we can sew. Once your check spring is at a rest, when your needle enters your fabric, not before, not after, then it's ready to sew. So I'm putting my foot down, and I have set my stitch length to the longest length, 6. It's all the way down. I have my tension set at a 3. And now slowly I'm going to start sewing. I'm just going to slowly get out those first couple of stitches. Nothing's catching weird on the hook or anything like that. So I'm going to keep sewing, and we're going to focus in now just on this area because you see the setting is at 6 and the tension is at 3. So I'm just going to continue on. So far, so good. Turn it around. And I will move my stitch length up to a 10. And then up to maybe a 20. You want to test each of these stitch lengths. Because sometimes you might not notice a problem on one of the stitch lengths and it becomes apparent on a different one. So you have to test a variety of them. So I'm just removing my work. The front looks really good. You can see this whole long row here was the 6 per inch. And then here it's 10, and you can see where I switched to the 20 stitches. When I flip it over, it actually looks very good. I don't see any issues with the tension. I don't see any weird loops. And when I pull, I have a nice tight stitch. So what else would I check? I'm going to make sure that I did get 6 stitches per inch. I like getting that. And I'm going to take that longest stitch, and I'm actually going to choose a place a little further down from the beginning, because sometimes it does take it a minute to settle into its full work mode when you first crank it up. So I will measure to see, do I have 6 stitches per inch? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one's spot on. That makes me happy. So sometimes they're not. And sometimes you cannot get exactly 6 stitches per inch. You might end up with 7, and that is just that machine. So this is ready to test sew a few more things, but I want to just talk to you about some problems that you might have had. So if you were sewing your test sew and you couldn't sew slow like this, and you were just sewing like this, so you only had one speed, that's probably your foot controller. That's probably not your machine. So something to think about. If you were just getting a big ball of thread underneath here, or your thread was breaking or something like that, then it's time to think about rethreading your whole machine first before you do anything else. Thread the top, take the bobbin out, put it back in the bobbin case, go through that all over again. If you're still having issues, make sure that whenever you put your needle plate back on, that you actually put the little hook finger on the hook assembly up between the two little spots under the needle plate. And let me see if I can show you that one more time so you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this hook finger positioned between this gap right here. It has to be up and sandwiched between this gap. If it's not, it will never sew correctly. So make sure you did that. If you're still having issues, then it's time to take off the needle plate and watch the thread go around, see if it's catching somewhere, see if you have clearance that maybe is just not quite right. And that is a different day, a different topic. So this machine sews great. Let's do a couple more tests and we can wrap it up. So I have set my stitch length to about an 8, and I'm just going to take this test fabric that I have and I'm going to give it a couple folds. So starting out, it's going, let's see, we'll turn it over so the fold is on the other side. It's going to just have 2 layers, but as it gets down, it's going to have 8. I just want to see how it handles the transition to the more dense fabric. Looks good. And then I will maybe make an even smaller stitch. You see that? Went right through, no problems. But let's check the underside and see if our tension is still looking good. So that's the top. I didn't adjust this stitch too much. This is just slightly longer than this stitch. You see that? Look how perfect. This was awesome right from the beginning. I hope you have the same experience. If you don't, you can put a comment down below and hopefully I can help you or at least shoot you some ideas as far as what's going on. A lot of times it's just a matter of rethreading your machine, collecting yourself, and trying again. So the last thing we have left to do is to put on the bed extension. And I really want to save that for the final video because I know that sometimes people are going to look for just how to adjust the bed extension and keep it from flopping. And I want that to be really easy for people to find in the future. So thank you so much for following along. Good luck to all of you. And I will see you again very soon for the final video in this series. Bye.